proudly representing the 14th District here in Illinois, our friend Congressman Randy Hultgren. Congressman, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
How you doing this morning?
Good. Cold.
I was going to say...
in Illinois, but good to be here, and things are good.
Okay, you are in Illinois. I was going to say that whole eastern seaboard area kind of looks like a mess this morning.
Yeah, I just got home. The Democrats are having their retreat. We had ours a few weeks ago in Philadelphia. They're in Philadelphia, so I don't know if it's affecting them or not. But anyhow, it made for a little shorter week legislatively, so it gives us a chance to be back working in the district, getting around meeting folks. So, yes, good to be home.
Outstanding. Hey, let's talk a little bit about what's gone on over the last week in Washington. You've got some confirmations. You got some people ready to take their seats, and you've got people yelling at one another at a very high volume.
Yes, we do. Yeah, interesting times. I think it's good. Things continue to move forward. We're doing our work in the House, passing things, trying to right-size a lot of just the huge growth of regulation that had happened with the last administration, especially the last 6 months. It literally was an avalanche of regulation that poured out on, especially hurting smaller businesses, families, people looking to start up a new business or grow a business. So doing some stuff to kind of right-size that, and then in our work in committees, continuing to try and grow opportunity. So a lot going on there, and all the while watching the Senate with confirmations that are happening. Looks like, again, good movement there with the Attorney General being nominated. Looks like Tom Price, Secretary of Health and Human Services, likely will go through today. I know the procedural votes happened last night in the Senate. So that's great. He's going to be fantastic. Dr. Price is such an amazing, smart, compassionate guy who served patients for many, many years, and I think is just going to be a perfect fit to get health care going in the right direction.
I also feel, too, having been around Dr. Price several different times, it's very, very difficult to sit down and have a conversation with him and not come away not liking him.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, he just is such a good guy. We all have a special love for Tom Price, to those of us who have been elected since 2010, because while we were running, he did a thing where every Sunday night he would do a conference call with all the candidates just to tell us what's happening in Washington, explain all the craziness that was going on there while we were running, focused on our campaigns. But, as you come into Congress, it felt like we already had a good friend, someone who knew us, someone who cared about us, who took the time to make sure that we understood a little bit more what was going on. And I think, classes following me, candidates in the years following, have had that same opportunity. So really good guy, a lot of good ideas of how do we, this thing's incredibly broken, the healthcare system. We're in my district, again, more than half of the counties that I represent have only one insurance company now. And that's just not healthy. You've got to have multiple sources you can go to. You got to have choices. When you have one, you don't have a choice. That's it. And so getting back to having a marketplace that really is focused on patient care, and doctors have that. And one of the things, too, I love about the medical profession is this idea of, first and foremost, do no harm. So if you're meeting with a patient, make sure whatever you do isn't hurting further, but is really bringing help. And that is how I know he's going to approach repairing this very flawed, very broken healthcare law.
Now, I had been reading, and I saw some weeping and gnashing in teeth over it, that it could take up to a year for repeal and replace of Obamacare. And, people saying, well, no, the Republicans are backing off. This was a promise. This was going to get fixed right away. But this is not the sort of thing that you guys want to go into and throw it together, not having it fully put together. We saw what happened when it was done before.
Yeah, we don't want Obamacare light. We want it to work. We want a system, again, where people have choices, where it's patient care, number one. Everything is through that lens of our patients getting the care that they need, our seniors getting the care that they need, our veterans. All of this gets impacted by the quality of our health systems around the world, and so much has happened that we need to make sure that what's working, we protect. All the things that aren't working, all the huge costs and taxes and loss of options, loss of choices, being forced into things that you don't want or need, losing the doctors that you wanted to see, all of this stuff is what needs to be fixed. And we can do it. I think it's going to happen in a very measured way, in a very thoughtful way, but also as quickly as possible. one of the things that really frustrated me with the law when it was passed was how literally in that couple 1,000-page bill that Nancy Pelosi told us, we can read it once it passes. You can find out what's in it after it passes, which again was so wrong.
Yeah.
But what they also put in there is, if you remember, was literally hundreds of times throughout the bill. It says the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall determine. So in other words, Congress didn't do a lot of this. They just kind of shoved it off on the Secretary of Health at the time, Kathleen Sebelius. And I think a lot of the rollout and what they didn't work. But the good news now is we have someone who truly is all about patient care and making sure patients are getting what they need and deserve. And Dr. Price is the secretary. So it gives opportunity, I think, relatively quickly, even under the existing law, to make some very significant changes that are going to help people, that are going to help patients and help doctors be able to make their decisions. So it's not one insurance company that you are tied to, and it's not huge bureaucracy. It's not Washington, D.C. saying this is the coverage you can have, or this is what you have to pay for, whether you want it or not. It's getting back to doctors and patients making those decisions.
Spending some time with Congressman Randy Hultgren. Speaking of helping people, tell us a little bit about your support of the Reins Act.
Yeah, it's the Reins Act it's reining in government. It's out of control executive authority that we've seen, like I said, throughout the last 8 years. Huge volumes of regulation dumped on our communities, on our families, on really slowing down opportunity for growth.
Billions of dollars worth.
Yeah, it is, and it's a lot of them are huge impact. Many are just piling on. So it's like death by 1,000 cuts. It's regulation after regulation after regulation. So what this does is go in and say, let's right size this. Let's have cost benefit analysis. If we're going to have regulation, let's see what it's really going to cost. Let's see what the benefit is. Part of the problem is so many of the people who are in these regulatory agencies have never worked in a company. All they've worked for is government. And lifetime bureaucrats just don't really understand how expensive it is sometimes to do certain testing or certain filling out certain papers. And we've seen, especially, I see it with financial services, where our community banks have just been crushed by regulation. They've got, a pretty small team there to serve a community. And what we've seen is people pulled from customer service to be put into compliance, into filling out paperwork for Washington, D.C., that they wonder if anybody's even ever taken a look at. So what the Reins Act does is it's pretty broad across the board, saying let's right-size this. We're not taking away all regulation. We're just having pillars of regulation to go after bad actors. People are trying to harm us. If it's people trying to harm investors, people trying to harm our environment, we need those pillars of regulation. But this micromanagement out of Washington, D.C., people are tired of. Big government doesn't know everything. And it really is. It's getting back and asking this question. Let's look, before we have this new regulation, what's it going to cost and what will the benefits be if we have this regulation in place versus letting the states make the decision. They understand their communities and counties much better than national entities do. So trying to push some of this back, and then also sunset regulation. It's a big part of the Reins Act that I was active on and have sponsored. I've been the chief sponsor for the last few Congresses, is sunsetting regulation that maybe 20 or 30 years ago made sense but no longer makes sense, but still has a significant cost on companies, on, again, families who are just trying to serve, to make a product, to provide service to a community. And so I'm excited that that's a part of this as well. And we're seeing the new administration take action on these things, which is so encouraging for me and really bringing a lot of relief immediately. And then that provides a temporary relief. Executive orders don't last forever. So that's where legislation coming in, and so much of this stuff is we're able to get through the House and the Senate. I think is going to be able to pass these things, and I know the president will sign them once he gets them.
Congressman, before we let you go, the spotlight was shown late last week or over the weekend when an alert flight attendant spotted something wrong with a man traveling with a younger woman as co-seatmates, and looked into it a little bit further and basically foiled sex trafficking by helping out the young woman that was involved in getting her away from this. And that leads me to you reintroducing the bipartisan bill to stifle demand for sex slavery.
Yes, it's so sick, honestly. I'm so dark, the stuff that's going on. And it's mainly to young women and young girls. And we need to do everything we can to protect every single person from this kind of torture, this kind of abuse, this literally using up and throwing away, which is happening right here. It certainly is happening around the world. And we have a responsibility to do something, to try and help. And I'm so grateful that this one was helped and this one was rescued, but there's so many others that aren't yet and aren't being helped. And so introduced a bill that strengthens one of the best laws we've ever had. It's called the Trafficking In Persons Act, and it's something that our State Department uses to hold other nations accountable for going after human trafficking and human traffickers. But as we are addressing what other countries are doing, a big part of having success in lessening the amount of people being trafficked, specifically sex trafficking, is looking at the drivers. And the biggest draw or reason why people are trafficked is for prostitution. And when governments around the world are not taking seriously going after the pimps, the traffickers, the purchasers of sex, then there's a constant demand for these girls, these young women, to be pulled into this and so oftentimes tricked and literally enslaved in this life, which is really torturous and so sad. So anyhow, what my bill would do is give this additional authority of the State Department to hold other nations accountable for truly going after prostitution. If you have prostitution in a nation, you're going to have child prostitution. There's no choice in that. That's statutory rape when it's 12 or 14-year-old girls who are being pulled into that. And that's the average age of prostitutes around the world. So we've got to change our laws, and we have to change how we're looking at other nations, what they're doing, dealing with prostitution. Some nations have done a great job. Sweden has done a great job of going after the traffickers and the purchasers, and they've seen a dramatic decrease. Spain, not so much. A good friend of ours, but they still have, they brag about, again, their houses of prostitution, and we know it's a huge problem, the number of people who are being trafficked there.
All right. Well, yeah, and read more. Go online for those who, this is an eye-opener, what the congressman is saying to you this morning. You didn't know about. That sort of information is all over the place and really, really frightening stuff.
Go ahead. Quick. If you see something, say something. If something just doesn't look right, take an extra step to ask about it. If something's going on in your community or something going on at a storefront and it just doesn't look right, talk to your law enforcement. Talk to people who maybe could help. And it is, as we are more aware, just like that, the person on the flight stepping up and providing that help. We can have that kind of awareness, looking for people around us who need help.
Congressman, as always, I know how busy you are. I appreciate you taking time out of your morning for us.
Always great to be with you. Have a great day and stay warm.
We'll talk to you next time.